Hey gang, Fraser here. I've been sailing all the seven seas, searching for that most elusive treasure, the perfect pirate game. There are a lot of pretenders, some of them good and some of them very bad. But there aren't many that make you feel like a true pirate. Verity is the rarest treasure of them all. So when an old man with a hook for a hand gave me the map to Marcusson and Agard's treasure, merchants and marauders, well, I could hardly say no. Is this it? Is my quest at an end? There's only one way to find out. I love the pirate theme. That mostly legendary, romanticized period of history where desperate men did desperate things in an age of high adventure and low morals. And I know I'm not alone, because there are hundreds of games with pirating as the main theme, but few dare to attempt what Merchants and Marauders is trying to do. Merchants and Marauders wants to stand you on the deck of a ship, put your hands on the wheel and launch you into the Caribbean Sea, slap dab in the middle of the golden age of piracy. And if it can do that, then it is the perfect pirate game. Let's see how she handles. Straight out of port and it's keen sailing because the board is a map. You think that would be rule one for a pirate game, but it's amazing how many don't do it. And pretty soon the Caribbean will be teeming with activity. Your friends' ships, merchant traders, national navies, rogue pirates, rumours and missions, goods in demand, specialty upgrades for your ship, closed ports, safe havens, tons and tons of things to do. And it's all very exciting and inviting world to sail forth into. But let's not get carried away. Let's remember why we're all here. What is it that a pirate treasures above all things? That's right, glory points. First one to 10 is proclaimed king of the Caribbean, and everyone else stops trading and pirating because they're the winner. But how do you get them? Aha. Well, there are many ways to accrue fame and glory on the high seas. You could kill in the commodities market by picking up goods which are plentiful and cheap in one port and in demand and highly prized in another. And why not reinvest that massive profit you just made into buying a bigger, more powerful ship? This is my personal favourite way to increase your glory, as you can imagine the warm, glowing envy of the people of the Caribbean coveting your ship, and literally experience it from the other players at the table. Sure is great having a frigate. Or you can complete a quest for a local governor, investigate a rumour you heard from a salty dog in a tavern, stash a fantastic wealth in your completely superfluous yet amazing cardboard chest, or you could seek out less legitimate means to spread your legend. Engage in daring raids on innocent but unforgivably undefended merchants of the Caribbean, or if that's not bloody enough for you, why not murder your friends, killing their captains, stealing all their hard-earned possessions, and presumably slaughtering their crew in a cold, methodical fashion. Pirates. Yes, there's lots of ways to earn glory, and that means there's lots of valid ways to play, any one of which can win you the game. You can try specialising in one kind of activity or stick your fingers in all the pies. It's up to you. And that depth of choice is the heart of what makes Merchants and Marauders great. It's the principal method it uses to engage you as a player. It says, here is a world full of possibilities. And they all offer the same rewards, so do what you find fun. Just bear in mind that your choices have consequences. So you're a merry merchant, aren't you? Abiding by the law and filling your hold with booty and sumptuous fabrics. Except as you ride lower in the water, you become a greater prize for the NPC pirates sailing around. Not to mention catching the eyes of your fellow players who've turned pirate, and maybe even those who haven't. You've brought it on yourself. Maybe you could head back to your home port where you could stash some of your gold, keeping it safe and nabbing some nice glory points while you're at it. But that involves travelling all the way back home. You could spend some of it upgrading your ship, maybe upgrading your rigs and sails or installing another cannon port. Great! You're more likely to be able to succeed in missions or investigating rumours now, but you've also just siphoned off your ability to buy new goods to trade and lost the opportunity to gain those glory points from stashing the gold. And those upgrades won't do much good if they end up at the bottom of the sea anyway. Choice. Consequence.
Pirating is hardly the pleasure cruise one might hope for either. As soon as you do something illegal, such as callously murder a boat full of innocent human beings, you are rewarded with one of these: a bounty from the nation you attacked. If you have any bounty from any nation, you are a pirate. And that means the NPC ships from all of the nations present in the Caribbean will actively hunt you down if you're nearby. And these are the big boys, Navy ships full of trained soldiers. You don't want to be caught. Not only that, but all the ports from the nations you've wronged will close to you, making it harder to find safe harbour during a storm or when you need repairs. And speaking of which, while you will certainly be raking in the ill-gotten goods and plunder from your merchant raids and general piratical activity, it's hardly a safe endeavour itself. You're going to get beaten up, and much of that plunder will end up in the pockets of the shipwrights, who you're going to have to pay to keep you in fighting condition. Oh, and one more thing. Yeah, I saved this till last. Privateering is an absolute go in this game. As long as you're not a pirate, you can attack a pirate ship with complete impunity. In fact, you'll be rewarded. So whether it's an NPC pirate or one of your tragically misguided friends, if you successfully kill them, not only do you get the chance to plunder their holds and gain a glory point for defeating an enemy ship, but you can collect the bounty. And they can grow impressively high depending on how much pirating they've been up to. The life of a pirate can be profitable, but it can also be short and brutal. Choices, consequences.
So I keep talking about choices, and it's something that I'll continually return to in reviews because ultimately, therein lies the game. You can look at some of my previous reviews for more on that, but let's deal with it directly here. Merchants and Marauders offers you choices of the absolute highest caliber. If it wasn't already obvious, every choice you make feels heavy and impactful. It changes who you are, what you are, and the game world changes. It reacts to your choices and your new position in it, as to your fellow players sitting around the table. It's rare that you're presented with a no-brainer, and it matters. From the small stuff, such as whether you should spend your gold on an upgrade when it could be put to use elsewhere, to the big stuff like whether or not you decide to attack a Spanish merchant. Absolutely everything has a trade-off, and you feel the cost of that lost opportunity as you're forced to deal with the consequences of your actions, and that is incredible. But there's one choice that we've already discussed that stands apart from the others, and it is my favourite thing in the entire game. In Merchants and Marauders, you choose to be a pirate. Seriously, just think about that for a moment. In most pirate-themed games, everyone is a pirate. The only agency you have is to play or not to play. But at the heart of the pirate legend is that choice. Men indentured by navies are constrained by society, choosing a life of lawlessness, brutality, and freedom. To be reviled and feared. It makes being a pirate in this game special. Even if every other player makes the same choice, it's a path you have chosen, with its high rewards and incredible danger. By simple virtue of its existence, this one choice makes the decision to live as a law-abiding trader more noble, and the decision to wreak havoc upon the seas more rebellious. Merchants and Marauders can make you feel more like a pirate than most games can before you've even done anything. But you will do things, lots of things, in this open world. Yes, Merchants and Marauders is a very rare beast, an open world board game. These are insanely difficult to design. It necessitates laying out many interweaving but equal paths to victory, built on a bedrock of interconnected game mechanisms that support the world.
without taking ages to learn or weighing players down with cognitive load, so that they can be free to just explore and play. And the short story is that Merchants and Marauders does this with aplomb. Mostly. Discussing every mechanism in the game would be a madness which even I wouldn't attempt. But here are some highlights. First up, when you start the game, you will play as a unique character. Each one has a nationality, special ability, and a different skill set represented by their ability scores. Some are great leaders, others master steersmen, and so on. Now, some characters are better suited for a particular style of play. For instance, a pirate is more likely to favour high scouting ability than a trader. Why? Well, as a pirate, most of the time, your bread and butter will come from raiding the fat merchants that hang around near the affluent ports of the Caribbean. If you're able to successfully scout and identify one of these merchant vessels, you can attack it. And how you perform that attack is particularly interesting. Check it out. Your raid is abstracted into a little mini-game. The story of your assault is told by drawing a number of these cargo cards, but we're just looking at the raid icons down here at the bottom. Each one will represent the attempts of your victims to escape or fight back. Your ship will take expensive and dangerous damage from their cannons, and you'll run the risk of letting them slip through your fingers when they attempt escape maneuvers. The more maneuverable your ship, the less chance of them escaping, and the more hardy your ship, the more damage you can take. But the linchpin is always your captain's skill behind the wheel. You can perform skill checks by rolling these absolutely superb custom dice. Just look at them. They've been designed with such attention to detail. They look like they've been shoddily handmade by one of your crew out of ivory or bone. See how the pips are all ski-whiff and not quite right? It's this kind of thing that really brings the joy to the physicality of a game, and I absolutely love it. But it's the skull and crossbones that we're looking out for here. Each one you roll is a success, and the more successes you can achieve during a raid, the more options you have to avoid damage or push your luck. You can push your assault by drawing more cards, taking more damage and higher chances for your quarry to escape, but increasing the potential haul if you're successful. And your seamanship doesn't just let you draw more cards. They can completely kill some, or make a bold but blind exchange from the deck. When you're done manipulating the cards, providing that you're still floating and the merchant hasn't escaped, all the plunder is yours. And you don't just get the gold value on all of the cards, but you also get the depicted goods, which you can take your pick from, throwing anything you don't want overboard with the corpses of your enemies. And if you manage to plunder at least 12 gold, your incredible exploits will be talked about throughout the Caribbean, and you gain a glory point, a red letter day. But merchant raids aren't the only kind of combat that can occur. It's a very different story when you're facing off against a naval vessel or NPC pirate or one of your friends. Now things are a little more complicated. Now we have rounds of combat, and they start by declaring your tactic, whether you're shooting cannons, trying to board, or escape. Captains go mano a mano in seamanship tests, and when the cannons are fired, if you possess any, you can use grape shot to decimate crew, chain shot to take out masks, or grappling hooks to help you board. Yes, you could end up fighting on the deck with your men, pitting your leadership against your opponents until one emerges victorious. And while the loser languishes in a watery grave, the winner has the option to assume control of their fallen adversary's ship. And that is pretty cool. But why the difference? Why the difference between this combat and the merchant raids? With any game design, it's useful to seriously consider the level of abstraction that you're aiming for. If you push towards accurate simulation, then you're invariably introducing more rules and exceptions, which gives your game greater expressivity and more choice and strategy for your players to consider. But it's bought with steeper learning curves, longer playtime, more upkeep, and just generally greater commitment requirements from your players. But you always have to come down on the spectrum somewhere. Merchants and Marauders is a fascinating, rare example that has two systems for essentially the same activity. During the ship-to-ship battles, two players are facing off against each other. If it's an NPC ship, one of your opponents will control them. These battles tend to involve high stakes. Lives, fortune, and glory are all on the line. So the extra strategy and choice you're given in these battles increases the drama, and your feelings of agency. Any less just wouldn't feel satisfying.
but the merchant raids happen much more often, and they're often they only ever involve a single player. So using the big battle system would take forever and end up being tedious. So it's abstracted further into this raiding minigame. Now we have a completely different system, so where Grape Shot has a specific effect that's different to Chain Shot in the big battle, special weapons all work the same way in a merchant raid. They change a failed roll into a success. Simple and easy. But it also makes perfect sense. You can see in your mind's eye why they've helped during this raid. You're still making the same kinds of decisions and still feeling involved in a lethal battle. That's pretty tough to achieve, and it's very impressive in its own right. But it's also notable in the way it's using all these elements from the rest of the game in the same but different ways. Specialist weapons and a more maneuverable ship matter for the same but different reasons. So you can leave port with a bristling weapons rack and feel prepared for battle, no matter what form the battle takes. This is more vital than it sounds. Connecting all of these disparate mechanisms in a cohesive way is what makes the world believable and fun to explore, and it allows the design to boast varying levels of abstraction for different elements. Elements like the Caribbean economy. You can make a healthy living from trading goods in the Caribbean, provided you have sufficient hold space to make the journeys worthwhile. And when you enter a port, you can discover what's for sale by drawing some random cargo cards. The more of one particular type that you discover, the more supply there is, and therefore the cheaper price for each card of that type. What a wonderful and simple way to emulate supply dynamics. More stuff available means I can buy more of it and at a cheaper price. Brilliant. However, each port has a good which is currently in high demand. Those goods won't be produced, but if you can supply that type of good to the port, you can sell it for double the normal value. Make a large enough profit on the trade and you'll also earn yourself a glory point. Wonderful, particularly if you just happen to have discovered a load of cheap rum next to a port where that rum is in high demand. And here is where we start to run aground just a little. While that might be a lucky break for the player who's had this excellent trade deal fall in their lap, to the player across the table who's spent multiple turns trying to achieve the same thing, that's unlikely to seem fair or fun. Merchants and Marauders is a big game. It will take a significant portion of your evening to play, and as a general rule, as the length of time to play a game increases, the amount of luck players want in that game decreases. But Merchants and Marauders is absolutely full of it. Failing a scouting test might mean you essentially do nothing on your turn. A good or bad supply at port means the difference between a glory point or next to nothing. Even the ship-to-ship combat we previously discussed is dominated by an initial first round volley of cannon fire. Whoever wins that first roll usually has a significant advantage over their opponent, and those battles are life or death. Of course, all of these things are very thematic. You might not spot anything at sea. If your ship is broadsided, you are going to struggle to fight back, but that doesn't necessarily make these design choices fun. Unfortunately, there are one or two other issues too. For instance, if you do lose naval combat, there's no option for mercy. You're dead. You get to come back with a new character and any money your previous character had stashed, but it can really feel like a massive setback, particularly if you were carting lots of goods and gold and were just about to finish that mission you'd been working on. New players are often taken aback by just how high stakes those ship-to-ship combats actually are. Some players are going to enjoy that, but most won't. But that's not all. On your turn, you get to take 3 actions. So your opponent's turn might look like this. They scout for a merchant and raid them, dock at a port, and then take the port action. And the port action can take a very long time because even though it only counts as 1 action, you can do a huge number of things there as part of that action. You can sell your goods and check what's being produced and buy from the market, recruit new crew, try to acquire a roomer at the local tavern, repair your ship, check to see what ship modifications are available and maybe buy them, stock up on special weapons, buy a new ship, claim a mission from the port governor, even stash gold in your chest if you're at your home port.
And it makes sense to do as many of these things as you can each time you take the port action. Even if you're a pirate, it's often worth checking what goods are being produced in case you get lucky. This means that there can quite often be a lot of downtime while you're waiting for other players to complete their port actions. Now, how much that bothers you and your group is only something you know, but it's such a widespread complaint even amongst fans of the game that there are a number of official variants that attempt to overcome this, such as allowing players to play their turn if the previous player's last action is to port. Personally, I've never found that to be a satisfying alternative. I want to know what my friends are up to, but it might work for you. The cherry on the top is that while your opponent had this massive turn, your turn might look like this. I suppose eventless days on an endless ocean is very thematic, but again, not necessarily fun. Merchants and Marauders was a very clearly built theme first. You'd never bundle these bizarre game mechanisms together and find a theme to justify them. They only make sense in the context of an open world pirating game. And if you take anything away from this review, I'd hope it would be this. Much like the sea itself, the systems here can't really be mastered. You're often at their mercy. And if you're the kind of player who's looking to master a game's system, if the fun you get is from learning the interplay between a game's mechanisms and exploiting them, then you should know that that's not really here. But that's no failing on the part of the design. That's just not Merchant and Marauders' goal. That's not what it's trying to give you. All of these systems exist in order to support the world on which you get to play. That's the primary function here. You get to be a captain of a sailing ship in the Caribbean and do what you find fun and interesting, bearing in mind that the world will react to your decisions. And from that necessarily flows your story, your daring merchant raids, your savvy trade runs, your gradual accumulation of wealth and prestige. Not to mention all the lovely little details that we just don't have time to discuss, like recruiting specialists for your ship which give you special powers, the random events that can affect the Caribbean such as storms and wars, the unique roles of each port, the comings and goings of NPC ships, how proving rumours to be true or completing missions can affect the wider game world. Ultimately, the mechanisms in Merchants and Marauders aren't the draw here. It's the experience which they support. The best example of that is here. This is a man o' war. It represents the pinnacle of humanity's naval engineering for the time. It's the biggest ship on the board and it can easily destroy any other ship in play. And there's no way for a player to buy it. How could a civilian ever afford one? No, these are only ever seen on the board if a nation is at war and happens to have one nearby. But you could try and board it. It's utter insanity. You'll almost certainly lose, but you have the choice. And here's the thing. I have seen dozens of players try and fail to capture one of these. Even though it's not a good move, the reward generally isn't worth the risk. This is a game which gives you these kinds of decisions and makes you want to take them. So, is Merchants and Marauders the perfect pirate game? No. But it is just about as close as anyone has ever got. And that's it, gang. I really hope that you found that entertaining and useful, and that it helped you decide if Merchants and Marauders is a good fit for you or your group. This is my first review in over a year, and I'm sorry it took so long, but I should be able to produce content a bit more regularly from now on. If you'd like to be notified about when I do, then you can subscribe to the channel if you've not already done so. And if you really do enjoy this content and it's the kind of thing you'd like to see more of, then you can support me on Patreon, which helps me produce more content like this. But until the next time, bye-bye.